Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Keep It Spiritually Simple. I'm your host, Sandra McEllis. And before I introduce our lovely guest, let me just ask each and every one of you to take a moment to share your support by hitting like, subscribe, share, leave a comment. Feel free to come back to the show and leave a question because it may be answered on a next episode. And if you want to see us instead of hear us, skip on over to Sandra McEllis YouTube, and then you can put faces to the name, to the voice, to the personalities, and all the other good stuff. So, anywho, we are about to, have Miss Doctor Nancy back on. But if you guys want to know a little bit more about Dr. Nancy, go back to a previous episode introducing Dr. Nancy, and she talks about plant medicine and some of her experiences, and also her journey on how she came to many things about her books. So if you want to know a little bit more about that, go back to that episode and then come back over to this episode. And we're going to be doing multiples in this series with Dr. Nancy. So welcome, Dr. Nancy.
Hi, good to be back with you, Sandy.
Well, good to have you. So let's just get right to it. We want to talk a little bit about your amazing book. Let's just show it right here. Y'all can see that. All right. And Divine Essence of Love. And if you listen to the first show, Dr. Nancy talks about in her books, poems came through her and she added poems to her books. And then people started really being attracted to the power of these poems. And so she decided to collaborate all of them into one cover to cover. And so we picked out a couple today we're going to talk about. And so she's going to share all that information with you. So go time.
Okay, well, actually, I wanted the audience to know that Sandy picked these poems, or I should say, Spirit allowed. It's so interesting. A lot of times we think our ego, we're the one in control, but really Spirit a lot of times is the one in control, and we just think that we're the ones picking and doing, or the doer, I guess you could say. But so the poems, there's four selected. Hopefully, we'll get through all four of them today. But mystics through the centuries, a lot of them have become poets because as they get these spiritual downloads, they come in the form of poetry. And so what ends up happening is these poems come in, which is what happened to me, started 15 years ago. And so the wisdoms are within the poems. And Maulana Rumi is one that he's known for, that he is a poet, but he was a Sufi master soul teacher, and he taught through his poetry. So there is, the wisdoms are within these poems. I'll read the poem. We'll go back through and extract the wisdoms that are within each poem, which I know will create quite the conversation because within all this, we can all relate to a lot of these experiences. And some of them we're like, oh, wow, this sounds really powerful. So what's being talked about. Okay, so this first poem is titled Love Potion, and it's located in my book on page 138. I have to say that these page numbers that I'm going to be reading to you are in the printed version, the hardcover and the soft cover. But if you purchase the ebook, then the pages, it's a little bit different format, so the pages will be a little different. But the poems obviously are still all in there. So, and again, this book is on Amazon Audible, or I should say it's getting ready to be uploaded on Amazon Audible. So for those that like to listen to books. Okay, so Love Potion is the title again. I sipped your love potion, was never the same. Now I see you everywhere, lovesick for you. I am drunk on the wine from the divine. Don't wake me up. Please be so kind. Dreamed of bliss and happiness. Love elixir cleanse the soul. Two united became whole. Okay, so let's go through this one line by line. I sipped your love potion. Over the centuries, mystics have talked about this ambrosia, this intoxication with the divine, this even Jesus alluded to this in the story of with the woman at the well. And so Jesus was thirsty, so he asked the woman at the well to get him some water to draw up from the well. And then once she gave him this drink, he started talking to her about this living water that once you drink it, you will never thirst again. And so she's thinking literally, well, where is this well that I can go to that I never have to go trek to the well and get all this water that I'll never become thirsty again. So I won't have to keep going to the well. And he said, well, what he was talking about was this divine elixir, this this intoxication, this ambrosia that quenches the soul to a level that brings it into union with the divine essence that's within us. And so the next line is, was never the same. So once we have this love potion, this ambrosia, you're never the same. And because of that, you see the beloved everywhere. You see source everywhere because now you've awakened to a level where you see that source is in all and within all. And that's why you're able to see this beloved everywhere. And you become, and it has the next line is lovesick for you. So what ends up happening is you have this experience where now what mystics will talk about this longing, and they just have this longing to be with source, and because they have this sense of separation, but really even that's an illusion because you cannot be separate from that which you are made of. And so when you're in physical reality, you have this illusion that you're separate because when you're in the earth school, you wanted to have this sense of separateness to see what this personal expression would be like. And so the next line is, I am drunk on the wine from the divine. Don't wake me up. Please be so kind. So once you get this intoxication, you just, it's like, it changes you in your viewpoint, how you live your life, how you interact with life. And you really don't want to go back to the way things were because now you've had this taste of this love potion. And so the next line is, dreamed of bliss and happiness, love elixir cleansed the soul, two united became whole. So this divine elixir, this intoxication, this ambrosia, this love potion, it goes by many, it's been said by different ways by many poets and mystics. But what it does is it's like the soul just drinks this up, and it basically it reminds the soul of who it is. It reminds the soul that it is from source, and it's having a physical incarnation, what we would call a physical experience as a human. And so this remembering is part of the awakening process, because when you realize that you're a divine being, there are certain rights and privileges that you hold as being a soul, and that is immortality. You're eternal, you live forever. Even when you leave this life and translate out of physical form, that's, you've just continued on. And there, whether it be through many other schools that you attend on the other side, or you come back to the earth school to do some more work that you want to do, you never quite ever arrive, as we say. You're always expanding and expanding and expanding. So that's the wisdoms within the love potion poem.
Well, when I first read it, I felt very dreamy and fairy tale like was my first feeling with it. But now that I understand how you just explained it, the poem has a whole different meaning. So would you mind taking a moment now that we've had a little more interpretation of it to reread it, since it is a short poem? Would you mind taking the time
Of course,
to reread
yes.
it and see if that helps the viewers just sort of marinate in this in a different way.
Yes. Of course. And also on my YouTube channel, we're actually going through all the poems and putting them on my YouTube channel to music and scenery and but here's my voice reading them. But the actual text of the poem is scrolling on the screen on the YouTube. So it's nice that they're going to be continually being put up, and there'll be a number of them because there's 224 poems in this book. So that's so I'll be excited too, but that's an ongoing project. So
Oh, I can't wait to see all that and listen to all that.
yeah, people can maybe before they go to bed, first thing in the morning, get like if they need that contemplation time and that sort of thing. So okay, so again, it's called Love Potion. I sipped your love potion, was never the same. Now I see you everywhere, lovesick for you. I am drunk on the wine from the divine. Don't wake me up. Please be so kind. Dreamed of bliss and happiness. Love elixir, cleanse the soul. Two united became whole.
Now, see, I feel like as you read that, I was almost absorbing it into my DNA because I had a completely different translation of it.
Yeah, it's interesting how when we're reading the poems, it's like our ego's reading them, but the soul's
Yes,
picking this up. It's like food
yes.
for the soul. The soul is feeling the vibrational frequency that's within the poem. And then, the teacher comes and says, "But let me extract what's in this poem much, much deeper than what the ego can really have this understanding." Because the ego's like into logic and all this other stuff, but the soul is drinking up this divine elixir, this
Mhm.
living water that Jesus alluded to or talked about actually. So
Mm.
um, so yeah, yeah, it's a popular. This is one of a popular one I've gotten a lot of feedback on actually. So
Well, again, as you were saying, spirit chose through me. And, like I said, I asked for the numbers, this was weeks ago, and the number would have to repeat itself multiple times for me to know that that was it. It wasn't just a Russian roulette wheel that's like spinning numbers and I'd see the same number once or twice. It had to repeat the number for me to
mm-hmm.
select that. So it's nice to know that the one that came up is a popular one. It's also, well, they're all extremely powerful. I can't say that I'm partial to any of the ones that were picked, but because they're all just so magnificent in their own right.
Yes. Yeah, it's spirit wanting to talk to us through the poetry.
Mhm.
Um, and the next one you chose was on page 149. So I'm there. It's called Pierce the Veil. Oh, this one's really very deep as well. Um, and again, it's located on page 149. It's called Pierce the Veil. I'm going to read it and then I'm going to extract the wisdoms that are within it. See beyond the veil of duality, of relationships, of belief systems. What is beyond this veil, this matrix, this hologram? Love pierces, love exposes, love teaches, love reveals. First, see the veils, lift each veil, rise above, unveiling your true self. Okay, so let's go through this. Seeing beyond the veil of duality means seeing beyond the physical reality, this third dimensional reality, because in the physical realm, everything is dual in nature. Night and day, right and left, up and down, male and female. It's all duality completely. So, what they're talking about is you want to see beyond this third dimensional reality of duality, and which would include relationships and belief systems. Okay, so what is beyond this veil is the next line. This matrix, this hologram. And it's actually been said many different ways. In the East, they will say, they call this the waking dream. You're awake, but you're dreaming. You don't realize you're dreaming until you've gotten beyond and you've crossed this veil of duality. You've gone to the other side, you've gone into these upper dimensions, and now you're seeing, wow, that's more real than this reality, than the third reality. That's why they'll say it seems like a hologram, a matrix. And actually, one time somebody had mentioned something a few years ago, and I thought this is a very interesting way of putting it. They said, "Oh, it's like being in a video game." And I was like, "Wow." It's an interesting way of putting it. But so the next line is love pierces, love exposes, love teaches, love reveals. So it's really the love that brings us above the plane of duality, above the physical reality, because it's actually love that draws us to this union to go deeper, to know more, to have this closer relationship. But again, it's not that you're separate from source, because like I said, you can't be separate from that which you're made of, but the illusion that this separateness exists because you are in physical form. And then the next lines say, first see the veils, lift each veil, rise above, unveiling your true self. So, what it's talking about is you have all these veils, these coverings that you have to get through and get beyond. And it would be, let's say, your ego, your personality, your mind, your shadow, your physical form, your emotions, all these levels that we connect with, that we feel is our identity, which really is a veil. It's just covering over our true self, which is our higher self. And so this whole poem is about piercing this veil to where we are on a spiritual journey where we want to connect with the divine essence that's within us that is beyond this veil of duality.
Woo!
Yeah.
All right, let's reread that one again.
Okay. Pierce the veil. See beyond this veil of duality, of relationships, of belief systems. What is beyond this veil, this matrix, this hologram? Love pierces, love exposes, love teaches, love reveals. First see the veils, lift each veil, rise above, unveiling your true self.
Hmm. Inhale and exhale on that. My goodness. What year did you write that, Dr. Nancy?
This one was written in the Azores, so this would have been in 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just curious because a lot of people talk about the veil and lifting it and so on. And
Oh, you know what? I take it back. No, this one came in earlier. Yeah, the early ones that actually the ones in the beginning of the book are the ones that I wrote, like 50%, the first half of the book was the ones that I wrote in the Azores. And then about the from the middle of the book back, those are the ones that came in a lot years earlier. And those you find those in the back of my other three books that I had published prior to this one. This one came out in 2024. So the ones that came out in 2023, those were poems that came in over the course of 15 years prior. So yeah, I take it back. This was more towards the back of the book. So this one is an earlier one. This
got
one
it.
probably could have come in about 10 years ago,
Hmm.
10,
I
12
was
years ago.
sensing that. And when you said like 2000, I was like, what? It feels so much more
Yes,
ancient.
I had to double check myself because yeah, exactly.
All right. My intuition generally doesn't steer me wrong, but I was like,
Oh,
okay, all
no,
right.
no, you're
Question
right.
myself there. I guess I got that flat out wrong. All right.
So
All
the
right.
next one is you picked was on 172,
Yes.
and this one's called Quietness. This one goes, contemplation reveals deeper meaning. Inner peace reveals deeper insights. Calmness settles in, deeper revelations. Quietness offers contemplative life, solitude necessary, being with the beloved, inward gaze, quiet conversations, the divine manifests. Okay, so uh, contemplation comes in many different forms. It can come in meditation. It can just come in our solitude, our time that we've set aside for our spiritual development, our time with the beloved. And when we take this time, comes the deeper meaning with life. And also, this inner peace, the next line is inner peace reveals deeper insights. So, these insights, these inner downloads start to come in. And the next line is calmness settles in, deeper revelation. So, as you get the insights, the revelations start dropping in. Oh, that's what that means. Oh, this is, and sometimes it's not right away. I mean, I've had some things revealed to me that it wasn't until a year later that the insight, it just hit me out of nowhere, like, that's what that was all about. And it's just sometimes it's just we're not ready to hear the answer. Um, our ego says we want it now. We want it all now. And I think it just has to do with a vibrational frequency of where we are at that time. And so the next line is quietness offers a contemplative life. Now, there are souls on this planet that is a goal for them to have a contemplative life. There's Eastern monks and nuns, there's Western monks and nuns that their orders and their vows choose for them to have a solitary contemplative life. And a lot of these orders, um, I'm trying to think of one in particular that's it's a Western Christian order. It's in the Catholic Church. I call them the prayer warriors. They take a vow. Basically, they're in seclusion, and they pray probably like 14 to 16 hours a day. And thank goodness we have these souls on our planet because they balance out the evil and the darkness that's on this planet. So you have to have a balance of souls that counteract the darkness with their light. And and then the next line is solitude necessary, being with the beloved. So we really need to have this quiet time. I think peace and solitude is so rare in a fast-paced modern lifestyle. And I think that's why even our ego gets tired and exhausted. And so even this time that's set aside for our quiet time, our contemplative time, is actually helping the ego. It calms the egos. A lot of times our ego gets angry. When you start to see the angry, we lose it is because the ego is overwhelmed. It's just jammed full of information, whether it's from the TV, the radio, the internet, the emails. It just keeps coming in, and a lot of times the ego just gets depressed and upset. And so that even helps in the spiritual to spiritualize the ego in that process. So the next line is inward gaze, quiet conversations, the divine manifests. So as we are going through this spiritual journey, we are raising our vibrational frequency. And the overall goal, because people are like, well, I hear all these lines about raise your frequency, expand your consciousness, and keep going, and all this stuff. Well, what is the purpose of all that? Well, the overall goal, especially here in the Earth School, is for us to get our frequency. Obviously, if you want to get into these high upper rarefied fields, you're going to have to raise your frequency to the level where it's a vibrational match. So this way, when you go to cross over and translate at the end of this life, and you want to get into these higher rarefied fields, you're going to have to raise your frequency so that you slide right in to this dimension, this high frequency level dimension when you translate out of physical form. And so their souls on this planet, their entire goal is to get their frequency as high as possible. And they're willing to sacrifice whatever that takes. Well, when you talk about, well, sacrifice, what's the sacrifice? Well, the sacrifice is your ego. That's what you're sacrificing. This reminds me of an expression in the East, and it's metaphoric. So I'll just let you know it's metaphoric, but I will share this expression, and there's a deeper meaning behind it. And I'll explain that too. The expression is you want to enter the battlefield. I'm sorry, you want to leave the battlefield with your head in your hands. So, what that means is the battlefield is between the ego and the soul, because the ego wants to run the show and it doesn't want to give up its control. And what you're trying to do is spiritualize the ego to a level where it steps down, your higher self steps forward, is now running your life. You've spiritualized your ego to a level where now your ego serves your higher self, your soul. And so now your ego is serving you instead of you serving your ego. And so when you have done that, you basically have decapitated your head, because now your ego isn't running the show, your soul is. And therefore, you walk off this battlefield between the ego and the soul with your head in your hands. And that's how you've succeeded in this battle and won the battle. So that's what that whole expression means. And so, therefore, the divine manifests, meaning you have this inner relationship, this inner dialogue. You have, like, when you come to the Earth School, nobody comes to the Earth School with no goals. We all have homework, we all have goals, we all have tests. I've said in my first book, Art of Divinity Revealed, I said, well, there is pop quizzes and tests, and then there's major exams. So that sometimes slam into us, and it's a matter of, okay, well, how am I going to handle this one? What can I glean and learn from this experience and this circumstance and that sort of thing. But yes, this poem was dealing about solitude, and you'll find as you're on a spiritual journey that as you go up into these rarefied fields, these rarefied frequencies, is that you're going to end up spending more time in solitude. It becomes a more solitude life, because you find that your inner life ends up taking precedent over your outer life. And then therefore your inner life takes priority, and you're willing to give more time for this inner life. And so we end up sacrificing this outer life, which a lot of it is running around. And since I had one of my spiritual teachers was Mahatmaji from India, I was a student of his and was initiated by him. And he had this expression of senseless chatter. He's like, a lot of this is just senseless chatter.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, that's where you start leading a more solitude life. It doesn't mean you give up your family life and your friends and this and that, but your priorities change, and you start looking and sorting through your calendar and going, what's really important here? Can I give up some of this other running around stuff to really get me to where I really want to go? And that's where I was kind of talking about earlier about some of these souls. They come to the planet and they get it right away. I mean, right out of the gate, you'll find them in ashrams, you'll find them in different temples, you'll find them in, I don't know, some of these countries where life is a lot more simple, these spiritual centers. And that's pretty much what they're working on, is getting their frequency up very, very high. They watch what they eat, they watch what they listen to, they watch who they interact with. I mean, it's an entire lifestyle. But when talking about that prior poem, we were talking about the love potion. When you get that love potion down you and you drink that love potion, it will change you forever. I mean, you really start to sort through your life. It completely changes you to a level where people will look at you if they meet you like a year or two later and go, gosh, you've changed. And because you change and you raise your frequency, what ends up happening is a lot of people end up leaving your life. And it's just because you no longer resonate with them, or they no longer resonate with you. And it's okay. Actually, that's a good thing, because people start to panic and go, what's going on? I mean, I'm doing all this spiritual work and now all these people and all these situations are changing. Yes, because you've changed. You don't have to be in an abusive relationship anymore. You don't have to be in a job that's abusive to you anymore. You don't have to be in a situation that is not conducive to your spiritual life. And so spirit will rearrange your life and say, well, because you've raised your frequency up to such a high level, everything else around you has to change to match that vibrational frequency. But the ego panics and says, what is going on? But there's nothing wrong with what's going on. You know, the soul's inside of us jumping up and down. It's excited, and the ego's like, I don't know about this, you know. So, and that's probably why they'll say on the spiritual journey, uh, your ego is the one that's going to be the one that sets the traps for you. It's going to be the difficult one to navigate through. And that's why they say, don't take on and start a war with your ego. That's the worst thing you can do. In fact, in the East, they'll say, befriend your ego. Be kind to your ego. Your ego has a job to do. It's actually required while we're in physical form. Like you go to the grocery store, you put the items in the shopping cart, you check out, you go to the checkout counter, you're doing the financial transaction. That's the ego that you need your ego to do all your daily duties in your life in physical form. But and on the inner life, that's where soul steps in. But there's an expression about the ego, and it goes, the ego is a terrible master, but an excellent servant. So, as part of the journey, it's spiritualizing the ego where it serves you, and it finally sits down and then allows, it's almost like you have this, there's another expression, and it'll say, you're basically saying to your ego, get off the throne so that my soul has a place to sit. And so the ego likes being in control. It doesn't want to be in the back seat, but you're asking your ego to sit in the back seat and have your higher self running the show. And you're in much better situation in that scenario than the other way around. But again, that is part of the journey. It doesn't happen overnight. It can take years, and it depends on each individual. Some it's going to take longer than others to get this ego spiritualized where it now is serving you. And you'll still have to keep an eye on this ego. Even God realized people, or people who've experienced divine union, as long as you're in physical form, you've got to keep an eye on that ego.
Mm-hmm.
It knows when it's not being watched. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't act up as much um, when it's spiritualized. And I'll give you a quick example. Like when I was under I was fortunate to have a lot of high level master soul teachers come into my life. I did request them, and spirit manifested them for me. But they will say, if you really want power in your life, you can get angry. You're allowed to get angry. You are a physical being and you have these emotions. We're not shutting these emotions down. But after 10 minutes of being angry, you're done. Can you shut it down after 10 minutes? Like, you're allowed to get angry, but only for 10 minutes. Then you got to shut it down. That's power. And so you become very self-aware. It's like, oh, it's 10 minutes. I gotta stop. Because the ego's the one that loves the vent, of course, you know. And
Sure.
but really, true mastership, when we start talking about spiritual mastership, true mastership is where you've mastered all three levels. Well, what are those three levels? You've mastered what they call head, heart, and hand. You've mastered your mind, your emotions. You've mastered your thoughts, and you've mastered which would be classified your head. You've mastered your emotions, which would be your heart. And then you've mastered your actions, which would be your hands. So a lot of people, they read scriptures, and it's one thing to know the scriptures, but now you need to put them into action. So the next level to master would be your emotions or your actions. So a lot of times people will have maybe their thoughts mastered or their emotions mastered, but the hardest part is putting it into physical form in your actions, your day-to-day, everyday actions. So you know you've reached true mastership when you have literally mastered head, heart, and hand, your thoughts, your emotions, and all your actions.
Yeah, I've always said I thought like, people came in with the ego being the leader, but you're going to go out with the heart being the leader. And I've always said too, like, um, at the end of the day, can your heart lead the ego? Meaning,
Mm-hmm.
can your heart be out in front, taking the ego along with it? because they have to synergistically exist
Mm-hmm.
and not have the ego be always center stage, running the programs of life in which you've been taught you're supposed to live.
Yes.
So that's beautiful. All right, let's give a reread to this one real
Okay.
quick before we go to the next one.
All right. Quietness. Contemplation reveals deeper meaning. Inner peace reveals deeper insights. Calmness settles in deeper revelations. Quietness offers contemplative life. Solitude necessary, being with beloved. Inward gaze, quiet conversations. The divine manifests.
Beautiful. Very powerful. We could unpack that one for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Uh,
then I was telling a friend the other day, and I said, I know my ego thinks it's front and center, but it really doesn't realize that it's actually following my heart. But we'll let it sometimes think it's in the
yes.
lead. And maybe my friends and other people may not be able to tell the difference, but at the end of the day, I can tell the difference,
Good.
you
And
know?
that's huge, Sandy, actually to know when we're hearing the ego in
Mhm.
our head and when we're hearing our higher self. And that actually takes some time, a little bit of practice to say,
Sure.
okay, who's talking here? And most people spend a lot of their day in their head talking to their ego, but they think they are their ego. And they're like, no, you are a soul and you have an ego. You
Mhm.
have a body. You have a personality. These are appendages to the soul while it's in physical form.
Mhm.
And so sorting that out to where we start to feel there's a real feeling, an intuitiveness that we get when we start on these and get along this spiritual journey where we can tell the difference between when our ego is talking and when it's our higher self that's talking. So,
Oh, yes.
mm.
All right, next.
Okay, this next poem is on page 110 and it's called Excitement of Reuniting. And I almost fell over when I opened the page because you just gave me page numbers. And I went, holy smokes, this one's really deep. So I'm going to try to unpack this one. And this one, you'll see as we start to get into it. Okay, so and part of what's in this poem was based on a mystical experience that I had during one of my ayahuasca sacred ceremonies, sacred plant medicine ceremonies, and I'll share as we get into that little section. Um, so again, this one's called Excitement in Reuniting. When you get tired of the circus of life, we'll start looking for a highly evolved spiritual teacher who can help you reunite with oneness. We'll reconnect with family of light. Talk about a celebration. You cannot imagine it until direct experience. Enormously vast celebration. Everyone from dimensional origin level comes for this excitement of reuniting. Love flows along with the music, never heard on earth before. Sheer bliss experienced. When a soul gets back home, then you are realized. When you come back down to earth to complete your assignment, physical dimension seems dull in comparison. Reason why realized souls don't care for this world much. Spend time connecting to a higher reality. They perform their daily duties, purpose work. Their hearts are attached to divine presence within them. Okay, so we'll jump right in. At a certain level, a soul gets tired of what I call the circus of life. They start on a spiritual journey. A lot of times, they may have been born into a belief system and they've kind of mastered that. So it kind of loses its luster or attraction. And that's when they go seeking. And that's when they are called a seeker. And so they start seeking for a highly evolved spiritual teacher to go deeper into these mysteries. And it says, who can help you reunite with oneness. And that is what we call, well, spiritual attainments, because when you come into the earth school, you don't come here with no goals. And the spiritual attainments have been called enlightenment, cosmic consciousness, self-realization, God realization. In the West, we call self-realization, self-actualization, and then God realization in the East, well, it's called that, but in the West, it's called divine union. So it's all the same, just different wording for our egos in the West to be able to swallow it a little bit better. But all souls want to feel this connection, and they've forgotten when they cross the veil of their divinity, their oneness. They are a piece of source. And this brings up a famous quote by Maulana Rumi, where he says, "You are not a drop of the ocean. The entire ocean is in the drop." So you may only be a drop of the source, but the soul is made 100% of source, and that's what makes you a divine being. And so this separation, this apparent, because it's not real, but it appears real, why they call it apparent separation, it's part of this remembering, this reuniting back with source in our understanding of our true divinity, being know this, know thyself as divinity. So this next line says, we will reconnect with family of light, talk about a celebration. You cannot imagine it until direct experience. There are experiences that you you can, I'll give an example, swimming. You can know everything about swimming. You can read every book, you can be an expert on swimming, but you really don't know what swimming is until you've had the direct experience of getting into the water, getting wet, swimming under the water, swimming on top of the water. Now you really know what swimming is because you have to experience it. And another one is sex. People can tell you all about, oh, this is great, or this is what you can, all the different things about it. But until you've had that direct experience, you really don't know what it's like. You have to experience, you have to have direct experience. So similar to on a spiritual journey, and that's why people will cross over the veil and they'll have these mystical experiences, because there is no way we can really understand them. There's no words that can really give us a true understanding in physical form unless we have this direct experience. So that's where direct mystical experiences are. They're just so impactful. And so that's why they're saying you can't imagine it until direct experience. Enormously vast celebration. Everyone from dimensional origin level come for this excitement of reuniting. One of my experiences was when I had the mystical experience of divine oneness. I found myself in this vast, vast hall. I mean, there was untold amount of souls there, and the music was unbelievable. And it was literally sheer bliss because I had never experienced this feeling of happiness to this level. It's like happiness on the physical plane. It's just magnify it times a billion, and then you might be there. And everyone is so happy that you came back. You were able to attain this because you can't do it on the other side. It's too easy on the other side. You have to attain these attainments while in physical form because you have all these challenges, you have all of this darkness, you have all of these it's very difficult here because we have all these temptations. So really, so many souls, when they're able to finally get beyond the ego, cross the veil, and go into these upper dimensions, meet their family of origin, or go back to their origin where they resided prior to incarnating into physical form, they're just so happy that you're back, and they know it will forever change you, because when you come back and cross back the veil and come back to earth, that's why it seems so dull in comparison in the physical realm compared to these other upper dimensions. And so this one, it comes from the excitement of reuniting. Love flows along with the music. Never heard on earth before. Sheer bless experienced. The next line goes, when a soul gets back home, you then you are realized. When you come back down to earth to complete your assignment, physical dimension seems dull in comparison. Reason why realized souls don't care for this world much. Spend time connecting to a higher reality. They perform their daily duties, their purpose work. Their hearts, though, are attached to the divine presence within them. Now, this brings up an interesting point when they say they perform their daily duties and their purpose work. There is a spiritual practice. It actually comes from the West. A lot of Western convents and monasteries, Christians orders that, and what they do, it's called practicing the presence. And how you do this spiritual practice is you practice the presence of the beloved being in the room with you at all times. When you're doing your laundry, when you're cooking your meals, when you're driving and you're running your errands, when you're in the shower, this all whatever. But the point is you will live your life completely different when you see the beloved in the room with you at all times. It's like your thoughts would change, your emotions, what you would, and then you have this inner dialogue. Now then begins to take place between you and the beloved. This and it's inner, so you have this ongoing inner relationship going on while you're just doing your daily duties, and it will change your day and how your feelings are, your thoughts, and that sort of thing. So normally things we would maybe think about, we wouldn't normally think about if we know that the beloved is in the room with us and we see the beloved in the room with us. And also this also helps to raise your frequency and spiritualize your ego, because now you are having this daily connection consciously with the beloved. And so it's definitely a spiritual practice. It does that, people can do. It does take some practice because we're used to spending a lot of time in our heads with our egos instead of being with a much higher frequency, such as the beloved in the room with us.
And it doesn't have to be very complicated. I remember being a kid and I just didn't feel like I belonged in my family of seven, five kids. And I always wanted to just sit in a rocking chair in solitude and just space out or spend time with the cat, just watching the cat, observing the cat, playing with the cat, or being outside doing something. Everything else that I had to do in life was a chore. It was a responsibility. It was a chore. And it wasn't until I realized, okay, the chores have to be done in order to live the life and keep everybody happy, right?
Mm.
But I'm going to take that part of me that enjoys my quiet time or my observations, and I'm going to take it with me everywhere I go and try to have it be present. I didn't realize at the time that that was my God spark, that I realized that I was different and I was just doing what I called mundane chores that siblings need to do in the household growing up. And I didn't realize a lot of it until I got much older, that the power of having the beloved God, source energy everywhere that you are. And when you do that, especially now in my older life, you see, sense, and feel things in completely different ways
Mm-hmm.
because you see the beauty. And so you have gratitude, then you appreciation, and then you have sparks of bliss and joy through the happiness of just being present to do it. So thank you very much for sharing those points. Now, what I'd like you to do before we close is let's reread that now that you've kind of unpacked it.
Okay. All right. So, excitement of reuniting. When you get tired of the circus of life, we'll start looking for a highly evolved spiritual teacher who can help you reunite with oneness. We'll reconnect with Family of Light. Talk about a celebration. You cannot imagine it until direct experience. Enormously vast celebration. Everyone from dimensional origin level comes for this excitement of reuniting. Love flows along with the music, never heard on earth before. Sheer bliss experienced. When a soul gets back home, then you are realized. When you come back down to earth to complete your assignment, physical dimension seems dull in comparison. Reason why realized souls don't care for this world much. Spend time connecting to this higher reality. They perform their daily duties, purpose work. Their hearts are attached to divine presence within them.
Thank you so much for sharing those, Dr. Nancy.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me on the
Oh my
show.
gosh, I really, really do appreciate it. That I felt each poem very differently than my initial reading of it. Very differently. And I think the viewers are going to feel the same. Reading it, unpacking it a little bit, and then rereading it. And then it's like it just registers very differently. And it was like a deep exhale through my heart. And I love this feeling that I have right now. And I'm so sorry we have to go, but we're going to come back and we're going to do a few more poems and we're going to unpack those and dissect them a little bit and read them and reread them. So everybody, I want you to tune in. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share so that you don't miss upcoming episodes, whether it's a part 1, a part 2, it's a series, or it's a one and done. You got to subscribe so it pops up on all of your Audibles, social media, and your YouTube. So, Dr. Nancy, anything else you want to add?
No, I'm ready to go for the next episode, and you've got more
Awesome.
amazing poems picked out that we'll be able to talk about.
Yes, definitely. All right. Well, we're going to see you back on Keep It Spiritually Simple. So, everybody, it was wonderful to see you. And yeah, bye.
Bye.